Global climate change is affecting everyone, including those of us living here in the state of Maryland. We may be small, but we are part of a larger community. The fact is, we can make changes in how we do things to make our home healthier and wealthier, while at the same time also reducing harmful pollution. There are many sources of greenhouse gas emissions, including industry, trash and other forms of waste, chemical discharges, and the burning of fossil fuels. The Maryland Department of Environment is committed to fighting climate change through strict enforcement of the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, as well as electrifying our economy and promoting innovations that support cleaner air, water, and land. Let's start with a brief science lesson. Imagine Earth as a giant greenhouse with a thick blanket of gases surrounding it. When the sun's rays hit the Earth, some energy is absorbed and warms the surface. This blanket of gases that keeps our planet warm are called greenhouse gases. They include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor, which prevents some of the sun's energy from escaping back into space. This natural process keeps our planet warm enough to support life as we know it. If we didn't have this blanket of gases in our atmosphere, then the sun's warmth would immediately escape into space. Space is pretty cold, so it's important to have a moderate amount of this blanket of gas to keep our planet habitable for people. But here's the thing. Human activities, such as burning fossil fuels and deforestation, have increased the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This enhanced greenhouse effect is causing the Earth to warm at an alarming rate, leading to the symptoms we know as climate change.
Change is really hard. It's hard for people to accept that we need to do things differently in order to make a huge change in protecting this environment. People don't want to believe that driving their gas car is creating greenhouse gases that's contributing to warming the Earth. It's just hard. People don't see that by just throwing away my trash is contributing to a great problem that we have that's creating this climate change issue. They can't see that. It's really hard.
We are already witnessing problems here at home. Take sea level rise, for example. Places like Annapolis and Cambridge are flooding more and more, even on days without rain. By 2050, the water could be over a foot higher, and by 2100, nearly 3 feet. Marylanders may lose their homes to climate change if action is not taken. Climate is affecting us in ways that affect our daily lives. Poor air quality is leading to cases of respiratory diseases. Warmer climate means longer periods where ticks are prevalent, and ticks can give us Lyme disease. You might have noticed that there are more unbearably hot days lately, and it's not just this summer. The climate is warming, leading to more days with temperatures above 90 degrees. In the past 10 years, we've had nearly 20% more days over 90 degrees than in the previous decade. And yet, if you look back 50 years, the number of days over 90 degrees has increased by almost 40%.
I hate hot, humid summers. That might be the main thing that drove me into working on climate change. We're experiencing right now the hottest summer on record. By the time I'm ready to retire, it's projected that we're gonna have 2 straight months of extreme heat days every summer. By the time my kids reach their retirement ages, all of summer in Maryland will be extreme heat days. That's awful. That's one of 1,000 reasons why I'm motivated to work on climate change. We are fundamentally changing our comfort, right? Ability to live comfortably on our planet. And that's actually not even getting into the deeper issues of the system changes, the global system changes that can occur that trigger all sorts of predictable and unpredictable still things that can really influence the way that our entire economy works. Crops are grown, where people live, where we're able to build houses, where existing houses will be able to exist and where they won't. The impacts are significant. And of course, I work on the easiest part of climate change, reducing emissions, right? Adapting to a changing climate, that's the hard part. That's the more costly part. You know, there's been a lot of conversation in Maryland about the cost of achieving our goals of reducing emissions, achieving the goals of now nearly 200 nations of the world have said we need to phase out fossil fuel use. That's the easy part. Adapting to a climate that will continue to change for the next century, that's the hard part.
Luckily, Maryland is not standing still. Our climate goals are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% from 2006 levels by 2031, reach 100% clean energy by 2035, and achieve net zero emissions by 2045. The Climate Pollution Reduction Plan lays out how to do it. The challenge often seems daunting, but we have some successes to report to show it's not impossible to make real change happen. Maryland once had the worst air quality east of the Mississippi, and in 2022, we met clean air standards for the first time in 50 years. We have only one operational coal-fired power plant, compared to 8 in 2006. We are founding members of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, which has capped fossil fuel emissions and charged polluters to invest in green projects for more than a decade.
Climate change is a really big challenge because it affects everyone. It affects my neighbor, it affects my global neighbor, and sometimes because it's such a large issue, it can be really hard to wrap your mind around what to do about it. But the thing about climate change that presents an opportunity is that everyone can do something about it. Personal actions, policy actions, and the leadership that we take here in Maryland at the Maryland Department of the Environment inspires other people to take actions too. So while it is really big and a big challenge, it means everyone plays a part in solving it.
The impacts of climate change, such as more frequent and severe weather events, rising sea levels, and shifting weather patterns, hit hardest on vulnerable populations who have the least resources to adapt and recover. In 2005, the Hurricane Katrina disaster in New Orleans disproportionately affected low-income neighborhoods, where residents face both the brunt of the storm's impact and a sluggish recovery due to limited resources. Low-income communities are often located closer to industry, which makes these populations experience air pollution more directly. When money is tight, life can spiral out of control, beginning with the breakdown of an air conditioning unit. Flooding can cause property damage, but also lead to mold and other problems. Urban areas are heat islands because there are fewer trees to shade households and hot rays from the sun are bouncing off of thousands of acres of concrete.
Climate change does disproportionately affect low-income communities. They are the front-line communities that are typically impacted by climate change. If you think of how most communities are in urban centers, most of the black and brown low-income, they're in urban centers. And if you go into those centers, they're concrete and asphalt everywhere. So if you're having 3-digit temperatures and the asphalt is heating up, and you're walking along, there's no shade, there's no trees in most of these communities. There's not adequate circulation in the homes. Even if you do try to get a system in there, it's not efficient because you're getting hammered by so much of the heat. It just doesn't help. So then you have higher instances of heat stroke. You have higher instances of complications to the heart. So that's one area. And then in certain areas, our communities live in low-lying areas, right? Because at a time, those weren't desirable locations to live. So cities, towns, whatever, pushed their low-income black and brown communities to these low-lying areas. And what's happening now is they're being flooded, right? With the increased rain intensity, these communities are being flooded. Their homes are flooded every day. And then what comes with flooding? There's more impact. It's not just, you lose your property or you got mold, you got, sewage being put into the streets. So then that compounds the issues.
The effects of climate change in Maryland are a bit harder to spot. Longer and hotter summers, beaches needing bulldozers to replenish the shoreline, longer periods of flooding without rain. But if we zoom out to the world as a whole, the picture becomes clearer. Canadian wildfires are causing poor air quality as far as the east coast of the United States. Drought and extreme weather conditions are pushing people who depend on agriculture to migrate to areas that are not experiencing the harshest effects of climate change. Glaciers are melting away to the point that we might not have any ice in the Arctic 15 years from now.
It certainly affects some people in the world more than others. You know, we're relatively fortunate to be living in a fairly wealthy nation and in a state that is relatively protected from some types of effects of climate change. You know, the Midwest is being decimated by drought, and that's affecting crops. California, decimated by wildfires. A lot of the world, though, is experiencing drought, fire, resource wars to such an extreme where the people have no choice but to move, to seek refuge elsewhere. Climate change is accelerating this global migration of people. And I'm not surprised that a lot of countries have this knee-jerk reaction of trying to, control migration. But we have to understand that all of this fits together. Everything that we hear in the political sphere fits right into how climate change is accelerating all these impacts. I'm concerned about what the future holds for my own kids, but frankly, even more so for kids elsewhere around the world who are facing even more of the brunt of this. On the electricity system, the electricity system will become, in some ways, more strained with more extreme weather. On the other hand, as we have more what are called distributed energy resources, like EVs plugged in, and more EVs that can provide power to the house when grid power goes down, a lot of people think that the future of the grid isn't less resilient, but it's even more resilient. And I'll also point out that Maryland has one of the most resilient electric grids in the nation. We benefit from decades of smart system planning by our utilities. And I have every reason to believe that we will have an even more resilient system with more distributed energy resources in the future.
There are ways that Marylanders can get involved in the fight against climate change. We can change our behaviors and purchase energy-efficient products that don't produce greenhouse gas emissions. We can diversify our energy portfolio to minimize our dependence on fossil fuels. Let's talk about cars and trucks. We are all familiar with the roar of the engine, the thick exhaust that spews out of the exhaust pipe at stoplights. Transportation is the largest sector for emissions in Maryland because of all the cars, trucks, and freight vehicles traveling along our roadways. Gasoline-powered cars pump out a ton of carbon dioxide. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, produce way less greenhouse gas emissions and can save you a lot on fueling and maintenance costs.
Hey Maryland, let's get rolling!
There are clearly challenges involved in transitioning from gas to electric in the automotive industry. But there are also signs of progress as prices become comparable for electric products, batteries become smaller and more efficient, and the charging network expands.
Pretty much everything about my EV is better than my previous vehicle. One of the things I like the most is that I'm not tied to a gas station. I can charge at home, I can charge at work, and if I need to, on a trip to the store or going on the highway, I can easily find a charger. So charging really works well for me, and I know that I'm saving money because especially when I'm charging at home, I'm saving money every day. I know I save money. It's cost me 7 cents a kilowatt hour to charge my car. I've saved like lots of money.
But having the ability to go outside and just plug in your car, that takes me 5 seconds and I don't have to take off my pajamas or my slippers. So I can't tell you how much I love that. I actually just did that last night coming in from DC. I was like, my car was like, I don't know if you're gonna make it home. I'm like, I got 12%, I'm gonna get there. And I got there and plugged it in and went to bed. It was great. It was the greatest feeling ever. And it costs pennies to do that. I mean, I switched over in October to a full EV. Prior to that, I would say the year before, I had a plug-in hybrid. And even with the plug-in hybrid, we saw a change in our gas, like our spending on gas. It's crazy how different the pricing is on that. And then the full EV, I just love it. I look at my husband like, we have all this extra money because we don't pay as much for gas as we used to do. We were paying hundreds of dollars a week to keep our cars gassed up. So that has been and then I get to spend the money on my other loves, shopping. So it kind of balances out there.
My electric vehicle is the best thing I could have ever invested in my life. It's quiet, it's smooth, it's clean. There's so much technology in an electric vehicle that you simply do not get in a gas car. I no longer have to go to the service department to get an oil change. There is no oil in an EV. I don't have to get my spark plugs changed and checked. I don't have to get my engine cleaned. I do nothing but drive.
So some people have jumped onto the EV bandwagon because they're like tech nerds and they love the idea that it is like all the cool things, right? Instant acceleration, it's all around an improved product over the thing that we've been producing for 100 years. But I'm frugal, right? I'm not a tech nerd. I got the EV because it was the lowest cost vehicle to buy and it's the lowest cost vehicle to own. And I kind of stumbled into the fact that it's also wicked fun to drive. I happen to have one that does all the driving for me while I'm on the highway. That makes my commute pretty brainless. But yeah, being able to beat any car, to the next lane is kind of a fun perk. Instant acceleration, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, unless you tried it, it's hard to explain how fun that is.
Next time you're in the market for a new car, think about going electric. If not, technology is improving every day. We are already seeing autonomous cars in the marketplace. We always talk about being resistant to new technology, but how do we feel about cars with no steering wheel? We can also make decisions to be more energy efficient in our homes. For example, you can lower your carbon footprint by installing solar panels. While they are not the industry standard yet, products are improving every day. Solar panels can cut down your electricity bill, boost your home's value, and make you less dependent on fossil fuels. Maryland is adopting new energy efficiency standards for buildings as well. Owners of buildings that are 35,000 square feet or larger will be required to start benchmarking with a goal to reaching net zero direct emissions by 2040. That means thinking ahead and making good investment decisions about systems that will lower energy bills in the long run, improve indoor air quality, and generally make things safer for the employees, customers, and families who spend a lot of time indoors.
A third of buildings already achieve the standards that we are establishing for 2040, right? Another third, our modeling shows, can easily achieve the standards as they do typical replacements. And then you have another third of buildings that will need to make some significant investments to achieve these standards. But again, with a 15-year window to do it, we think that it's achievable.
And here's a product that gets the least attention, but offers the most promise for making buildings greener: heat pumps. They are a modern, energy-efficient way to heat and cool your home. Swapping out your old heating system for a heat pump can keep your home at a comfy temperature, slash your electricity bill, and significantly cut down your carbon emissions. Heat pumps are already the most popular heating and air conditioning product in Maryland. There are even cold weather versions, and there are so many makes and models to choose from. The upfront cost is higher, but customers are reporting great experiences and savings on energy bills.
What I hope is that when every person reaches the end of the life of their car, their furnace, their air conditioner, their water heater, that in that moment they take pause and wonder, is this the time when I'm ready to upgrade to a zero emission thing, right? More and more EVs are coming out, easy choices, low cost. When someone needs to replace their air conditioner, that's the ideal time to upgrade to a heat pump. A heat pump does the same job as the air conditioner, but it also provides efficient heating. It's two appliances in one. And the heat pump is only a couple $100 more than the air conditioner that you'd have to buy in any case if your air conditioner dies. So when that AC dies, that's really when I hope people talk to their contractor, make that a heat pump. They'll get clean, efficient heating, and they'll get clean, efficient cooling, which is the thing that they really need in that moment when their air conditioner has failed.
There are federal and state tax incentives to help Marylanders afford electric cars, solar panels, and heat pumps. By making these changes, you'll be doing your part to protect the environment and help fight climate change. You can find out more on our website, mde.maryland.gov. We also offer tons of information on how to compare prices of products, access these rebates and refunds, and research what products work for you.
There is one super easy thing we can all do to reduce greenhouse gases, and that is plant trees. They are a big part of the solution, and in many ways, the star of the show. Trees remove carbon dioxide from the air and release oxygen into the atmosphere. Maryland has set an ambitious goal to plant 5 million trees by 2031. You can join the fight against climate change and get your green thumb at the same time.
Healthy trees and forests can provide so many climate benefits. Even as they grow, they help us fight climate change by taking carbon pollution out of the atmosphere and storing it in their leaves, their branches, and their trunks. But they also, in the process, can help us by reducing flooding and stabilizing erosion. They can also help us by reducing urban heat island effect and improving air and water quality. All of these benefits are really important, not just for our current generation, but also for future generations to come as those trees continue to grow and flourish for many decades.
The 5 Million Trees Initiative aims to plant and maintain 5 million trees by 2031. Trees are vital to combat carbon dioxide, helping to slow climate change. Each tree planted enhances Maryland's capacity to absorb carbon dioxide.
There is still a lot of opposition to efforts to decarbonize the economy. Consumers are hesitant to embrace products that may have a higher upfront cost, or they are weary of trying unproven technology. Some ignore the science of climate change altogether. Human nature is often to put things off until they reach emergency status. The good news is we are making progress. This problem is solvable.
None of our policies seek to take away anything from anyone, right? People are welcome to drive their F-150 fuel-burning trucks. They're welcome to use their gas furnaces and ranges and everything else. We're trying to implement policies that are really focused on the manufacturers, encouraging manufacturers to develop more and more zero-emission technologies to put into the marketplace so that consumers have better choices, right? Right now, you have many more choices to buy a variety of internal combustion engine vehicles. You have fewer choices for buying zero-emission vehicles. Our policies are encouraging manufacturers over the next decade to roll out more and more zero-emission vehicles to offer them to consumers. We're providing greater choice, and conveniently, a lot of those choices are the lowest cost options. Today, especially with the federal and state incentives, it's cheaper to buy upfront a new EV than it is to buy a comparable gas car. And that EV for the average driver saves them $1,000 a year on avoided gas costs. So it's all about providing greater options for people, and those options are across the board the lower cost options for people to own, operate, and enjoy. What's really exciting to me is that we have the right technology today: solar panels, wind turbines, EVs, heat pumps. With no additional improvements in those technologies, These are already the lowest cost options to install and to operate. We can achieve the clean energy transition with just today's technologies. Tomorrow's technologies, next decade's technologies, just further accelerate that transition, make it more accessible, even more cost effective for even more people.
We have to engage people. We have to talk to them. We have to invite them in to make decisions and be part of the process. With the green economy, we have to make sure that those who we always think about last are up front. They have to be at the front of the conversation. So I'm all for it, but again, it's about bringing people into the conversation and saying, hey, here's this buffet of things that we can offer. Does any of this appeal to you? And if the answer is no, then we need to change our thinking around that. And maybe it's incentivizing more things or other components with, rebates and things of that nature versus jobs. But we always need to create the opportunity for jobs.
The science behind climate change is clear. We understand what's been causing the warming that we see around us, which means that because we understand the problem, we can actually identify solutions that will work. If the climate change we are experiencing today was just natural and due to historic cycles, it'd be much harder to know how to make a difference. But because we know the source, it means we can be very targeted in our solutions and our strategies. And I'm really hopeful because a complicated, complex problem like climate invites the best minds, the best solutions, the most creativity to the table. I've seen that work not just in the way that we think about energy choices, but in the ways that we think about the importance of conservation, we think about the ways that we design and plan our cities. All of us can bring good ideas to the table, and if we think about them in a climate smart way, that's what it's going to take to help us achieve our goals.
It's a global issue, and so all of us need to be a part of it. If Maryland alone did its part, that would not change anything. We need everyone being a part of the solution. We have to do our part because we want to ensure that our children and grandchildren and the next generation are here. And they are depending on us to do the right thing.